All right, this is the Village of Rhinebeck Planning Board, meeting of January 17th, 2023. The first order of business is Cafe Con Leche, 6384 Mill Street, a sign application.
This is my seat, right?
Yep, that's for you.
I'm used to being
And
here.
Jeff will pull it up on the big board here.
Okay.
Our Steve Kornacki.
So for the record, my name is Paul Weigert from Timely Signs, and I'm representing Phil Cordero of Cafe Con Leche. This particular tenant, this is his second location. He has a location in the Wappingers Falls area, and he's leasing this space. And I think they're renovating now, if I'm not mistaken.
Looks like.
But yeah, they have some things going on. This is the former Calico space, and we're going to utilize the existing bracket that is there and hang a new sign where Halcyon was. I believe there are still, unless it has been removed, there were some white graphics on the upper and lower windows that were there. If they haven't been, yeah, the lunch well, dinner nightly.
This is from yesterday.
Yeah, drink hot, break fast. That lettering will go away, and we're just going to go with the,
That's the left side.
yeah,
That's the right side.
yeah. So all of the text that's on there now on those black panels will be removed, and I think that's shown in the drawings. Is that sign still there too?
Yes.
Okay.
And you say you're using the existing bracket.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
And that just sign will be removed. I thought that had been taken down. The previous tenant did, I believe they pressure washed the awning, so it's a little bit better than it was shown in my original pictures. But we're, and I think he just painted, I think he took black paint and painted the cat icon that was there. I'm having my awning manufacturer create just a new fascia for that out of black umbrella with thermal printing on it. So that'll be installed over the top of that awning, which is basically a new arch panel out of 1-inch aluminum. And it'll match the curve because we templated that late last week.
So are you saying, in other words, this awning is here,
Yep.
and there's the old stencil here.
Right.
Are you simply replacing the stencil in the existing location?
We're doing what's called an overlay. It's like it's a flat panel that is made the same way an awning is. Okay, so you'll have the bent aluminum frame. This umbrella gets wrapped around it, so it's just basically a 1-inch overlay panel that gets fastened from behind, and it just looks like a 1-inch extension of the awning, and it'll cover the graphics. Yeah, so that's just a panel that will go on top, made out of the same fabric.
I see, same kind of semicircular thing.
Right. And then all of the square footage, look at the application, we called out each icon, drew a box around it, and listed the square footage. We have 7.25 square feet available, and we're using 7.1. That includes the 2 window graphics, the 15 by 18 sign, and the icon that is on the logo that's on the face of the awning.
All the numbers look good?
Yeah, this first item is the hanging sign, which is correct. The second item are the total of the 2 window graphics, and the
Right.
third item is the replacement of the awning canopy, which is correct.
Yeah. So if you guys ever decide to change your application, a couple more lines might be helpful. Because sometimes we have, multiples. I suppose I could just continue it. Because we provide these on the drawings, that's why I combined the 2. So, yeah, I only have 3 spaces.
So we've had people fill in the right side there with extra stuff.
Yeah. I like your fillable PDFs, though. I don't like to do it on paper.
Okay. Any issues? Looks good. The only complaint I have is, it's not the rear running sign, so we're not gonna do anything about it tonight, but that railing on both sides comes out about a foot more than it needs to. Once we work the steps, can you show the side view?
Oh, wow.
So the step stops here, they could just put that vertical element right here, it would work just as well, and you'd get an extra foot of side width, which is pretty narrow in that area. So it's something that the owner can think about, but we're not suggesting he be required to do it.
Okay.
In the comprehensive plan discussion, we're very sensitive about trying to make the sidewalks as wide as possible.
Sure.
And there's a lot of constrictions, particularly in that area,
Yeah, I
with
can see
big
that.
planters and this railing and plants that overhang the sidewalk and, a 6-inch
Dude.
drop on the left-hand side as you walk up the street there. But at any rate,
Yeah.
I don't think that's your issue, it's just the railing could
I'll
be.
certainly pass it on to
Yeah.
the owner. And Victoria's here too.
Noted.
Yes. All right,
She has a more close line of communication with.
so I'll entertain a motion to adopt the sign application.
I'll make the motion to adopt it.
Second, Jeff?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Next item of business, also on Mill Street, 6376 Mill Street. It's confusing here as to what the actual address is. So this is an amended site plan from a previously approved site plan from 2020.
Correct. In 2020, you approved the site plan for what we're calling the Hub. It was a hotel, 9-room hotel project with retail on the first floor. We're now proposing to amend the plans to be 4 apartments with retail on the first floor. The change came about due in part due to the pandemic and some of the housing needs of the community. There seems to be a lot of need for apartments. No changes to the exterior elevations are proposed. Warren Temple Smith is here and will re-present the plans for, especially for the new member, so everyone can see the building. Christian Paggi is also here to discuss the site plan. The biggest change really is to the interior layout. And the change has several benefits, including provision of housing and a decrease in the number of required parking spaces. The site now satisfies all parking requirements without the need for an easement or payment into the parking fund.
So are you proposing to take away the 4 spaces across the street?
Yeah, so as part of this, if you reapprove this plan, we would expect that condition would not carry over.
Right, and so there'll be no fee in lieu.
Right, no fee in lieu, no easement across the street, it's a lot cleaner.
Yeah. So we have one member who was sort of late to this project in 2020, came in at the tail end, and then one new member. So why don't we start with you, Darren? You are fresh eyes and have some issues you wanted to raise. We also have a letter from the engineer, which came in late, but we can talk about those issues as well. The main condition when this was adopted back in 2020 was, there were a number of small conditions about easements and that sort of thing, but the main one is to fix the drainage in that area, which is really bad in the back and equally bad up front, near the front of the driveway. So we'll be eager to hear how those are going to be fixed.
Would you like Christian to just walk everyone through the site plan?
Yeah, I think that might help.
Sure. So, do you want me to go through the full site plan to?
Well, you can
Parking.
go over the highlights of the plan and then show how the drainage has been worked out.
Sure. So the proposed building is the hatched area in the front. There is about the front half of that building, it exists now as lawn. The rest of the area exists as impervious. The rear of the lot is an existing parking lot, so there's no change proposed other than kind of refreshing the parking lot, adding some curbing, refreshing the striping, adding some handicap spaces and curb stops. We are also realigning some of the curb line just to be a little bit more of a formal curb line as opposed to what's out there, kind of just a swath of pavement. So it will really just be refreshed. The water and sewer is proposed, just connection to the village systems. Water will be connected to right to the main in the front off of Route 9. We believe that there is a curb valve that we can connect to, but we'll be working with the water department whether, to determine whether or not we're going to need to tap a new connection or be able to bring a supply right off of that curb valve there. There's an existing sewer easement that runs through the property. It's a village main. So we are proposing to come out the back of the building with the sewer into a new manhole and then connecting directly to that main within that easement area to avoid the need for any easements with the adjacent property owner. So that's very generically the site.
Access in.
Okay, access is through the Frontier property to the south, towards the bottom of the page. It will be a one-way in, and then it circulates up through the property to the egress to the north, back onto Route 9 to Mill Street. In the plan set, there was a circulation diagram showing emergency vehicle apparatus, there you go, and garbage truck circulating through the site. So that was worked through in detail with the fire department and the planning board during our original review a couple years ago. So none of that has changed.
Can you show how the drainage is going to be fixed?
So the drainage is very tricky back there and in the front, as you well know. There are no village
There you go.
catch basins or any other drainage infrastructure in this area at all. And that area in the back is a relative low point to the surrounding area. It's basically at the bottom of the bowl. And that is exacerbated by the fact that there is a berm along the property line with the cemetery, where there's a tree line shown. You can see the call-outs for the existing trees right there. There you go. So there's a berm there, and that traps all of the water in the parking lot. So that's an existing issue. That area floods. Right now there is a what you can barely call a dry well in that location. There's actually two dry wells. One where the proposed catch basin CB1 is, and then one where catch basin CB2 is proposed. Those are the two. There you go. That's the top one is CB1, and that's CB2. So there are. Yep. So there are two small dry wells, which are really just, I think they are 18-inch corrugated metal pipe standing up with a gravel bottom and a catch basin inlet top. Those, I'm assuming, worked at some point. We went out there and did some soil testing. It's all very sandy, gravelly soils, which is great, and it's deep. So the soils are great. What we're proposing to do is get rid of those dry wells and install a significant subsurface infiltration system, those Coltec units, to try to capture and infiltrate as much as we possibly can within our constraints. And our constraints are the separation that we need to maintain to that village sewer main. Infiltration practices need to have, I believe, 20-foot separation to a sewer, a gravity main like that, and that includes the stone bed. So we are constrained by that, and obviously we're constrained by just the topography. The system needs to be at a low point, so it needs to be on that side of the property. and also obviously constrained by just the shape of the property. So we're putting those Coltex in those two areas and trying to divert as much water as we can to those. And what we submitted to the town, or to the village's engineer, was a drainage analysis that showed that with this size system and some pretty conservative modeling, we used some conservative numbers for infiltration, which were significantly lower rates than what we actually observed in the field. We modeled it with a 10 inch per hour infiltration rate when it was really about 60 inches per hour. So the results, the conservative results were that for everyday storms, 1 and 2 year storms, both of those systems would be able to control the runoff, and that it would not overtop and you wouldn't see flooding, which is what you're seeing now during just an everyday storm. The larger system to the right is able to control almost a 100-year storm also. The smaller system to the left, the 25-year storm starts to overtop it. So you'll see in a more moderate to significant storm event, you'll see some flooding over there based on what the results are showing, the model results. But again, those are conservative, based on the soil tests and the size of the system compared to what was there. And with the assumption that at some point that system those two dry wells were working, we're pretty confident that this is going to be significantly better than what's there now. You may see flooding in significant storm events, some ponding, but if we can, the goal I think is to try to mitigate those everyday storms so you're not, losing half of your parking every time it rains. So I want to reiterate that this is an existing condition. The letter from the village's engineer talked about doing some pre-construction analysis. Not much is changing. Nothing is actually changing relative to impervious in that area. And there was talks about reinforcing the berm to make sure that no water is going to the adjacent property owner. I don't know if that is a fair request, because we're not, again, increasing any runoff to this area. And in my opinion, I believe that, and I could be wrong, I'm not an attorney, but the way that this is usually, situations like this are usually handled from an engineering standpoint, you're not really, as a property owner, you're not supposed to impede the flow of runoff from an adjacent property. And that existing berm is impeding the flow of runoff from this site to the cemetery property. So if anything, there should be an argument to be removing that berm to restore natural hydrology, but just the optics of that aren't great, so what we're trying to do is mitigate as much runoff as we can on the property. But I can speak to Rob, the village engineer, and make sure that I'm understanding his comments. And I'm sure we can work it out. So.
Is there a curb line along there?
No, just the berm. The berm is probably 18 inches high in some places. So, and that's why we were proposing those curb stops.
Okay.
That's this row of trees here, there's a major berm. What about here, adjacent to this catch basin?
It's not, it's not as defined as the berm where the row of trees are. That row of trees is basically built, it had grown into the berm. So there's still a berm there, but not as defined as what you see where the trees are. But again, we're not changing anything. We're not lowering the elevation there. We're not trying to push water off to there. The low point will be in that area, CB2, catch basin CB2. So that's what will capture all of that runoff and then direct it into that system there. And based on some of the spot elevations and what we were seeing out on the site, we don't have enough spot elevations to confirm this, but it did look like that it would actually, if that system were to overtop, it would overflow to the north and down to the other system before it overtopped the berm and went into the cemetery's property. But we can look at that closer, and that was one of the things I was going to bring up with Rob. So if that smaller system were to overtop, I believe that it would still still stay on the property and make its way over to the other system, the larger system, where there's some excess capacity there.
It looks like the smaller stone bed could be enlarged a little bit because it's farther away from the sewer main than the other one. So if it doesn't meet the 25-year storm, couldn't you just make it a little bigger?
Enlarging the stone is not gonna make it big enough to control the
Enlarging the whole
25-year.
system is what I'm saying.
Yeah, if we added, I could see how many Coltex we could add to try to control the 25-year storm.
It's more of an engineering question, and
Yeah,
our village engineer will discuss it with you, but that's just an idea from looking at it. If that's an area where you have the most concern, that looks to me like it could be enlarged a little bit and still maintain that distance from the main, compared to the other one at least.
Or similarly, the curve around the dumpster enclosure seems to, in a sense, dam that water that would overtop CB2 and prevent it from getting to CB1 as efficiently. So just wonder if there's something that could be done to allow better water access through that channel. Because otherwise it has to sort of overtop and run out and around the dumpster enclosure. The topography seems to work once it gets there, but that also seems to be contributing to maybe.
Yeah, that right where the dumpster actually is, that's a bit of a hump there. So that the existing topography plus the curbing is preventing that runoff. So to change that hydrology, we would have to cut that down a little bit, which would increase the scope of the site work. But we could look at that. So I guess my question is, what do you think is a good target to try to hit here? Because what we were trying to do basically is try to get as much infiltration as we can without encroaching into any of these setbacks. We could, I think the only option might be to add some additional gravel area, but we could look at if there's maybe some other Coltech units that we could use to try to enlarge it instead of these 330s. So,
What about the ponding in the front? That's, it ponds where the crosswalk is, which is really not good.
so the only way to fix that is with some grading, and to try to reduce the amount of runoff that we're sending there. And the latter part of that, we're handling by sending all of the roof runoff to the back.
Is that what this is? I have a question about this.
Yes.
So you're connecting roof runoff into this catch basin here, is that what this is?
Yes.
And how are you doing that?
The roof leaders will discharge into that. So there'll probably be a manifold. I have to work out with Warren exactly how the roof drainage will work. So if they're external leaders, we can run a manifold around the building. If it'll be internal plumbing, roof plumbing, then we can just tie into the discharge line for that. So, but either way, offhand?
Well, external would be the
Ideal, yeah.
Yes, right.
So we would likely just run a manifold around the building to collect the roof leaders, and then collect that at a certain point, either a junction, whatever it is, by the building, and then send it out.
Okay, yeah, that's a lot of roof area.
So that is the change to existing conditions. We're bringing that area to the back, and that's why we are sending it to that further system, because there's all of the excess capacity there.
And the regrading of the front is already proposed as part of this project, right? Aren't you redoing that?
It will be handled as part of the DOT process. So we just got the spot elevations as part of this work. So we can now do some more fine detail work with the DOT permit to try to reduce the low areas and ponding areas. So, but again, we're going to be limited there by the elevation of Route 9 and the elevation
Sidewalk.
Exactly. So we'll do everything that we can to try to push the water.
So everything from the sidewalk is gonna go back.
Yeah.
And so in theory, the ponding that happens in front will probably be more from the frontages of the buildings. And sort
Exactly.
of collect at that low spot near the crosswalk.
Exactly.
Are these notations the elevation of the intakes?
So yes, the rim elevation is the top elevation, so where that grate is.
Yes.
And then the other ones, the invert elevations are the pipe, the bottom of pipe, the invert of the
Okay.
pipe.
So, for example, where the water would flow in on this catch basin would be 196 feet,
Correct.
right? And this one here is 198 feet, so there's like a 2-foot slope just between here and here.
Yep.
And here you've got 195 to 196, which is one. Looks like an awful lot of what's coming in here is going to be, this is your lowest one, right?
That's why, so we actually did a drainage area map.
Yeah.
And that's in our drainage study that Rob, the village engineer, reviewed. So one of the other reasons for this is exactly that. We're trying to, this is the smallest area that we have to work with and
Yeah.
the largest drainage area,
Yes.
receiving the most flow. So we're trying to divert some of that away from this area. One of those ways we're doing that is by collecting the roof runoff. The other way is with this catch basin. So we're trying to create just a local low point here to collect this runoff, send it back, and then there's a break about here. So this will be catching like right here, and then I forget where the break is, but it'll be basically here and here. And we're trying to get as much as we can out to the back into that system, because that's where we have the most area to really manage it. So, but yeah, that's exactly what we were dealing with. But that's the intent of this, to create, without this, everything would just continue to flow there. So we're going to regrade, do some fine grading here, basically push this down and get everything to try to come into here and then send it back to the maximum extent that we can.
Well, I guess the village engineer would be most concerned with how many year storm is capable of that sort of thing. 25 doesn't frankly sound like a lot anymore.
That happens every third week.
Yes, it used to, but
And that's why we thought it was important for the large system to
Yeah.
be able to handle even up to the 100 year, because we're increasing
Yeah.
the runoff to that area.
yeah, I get that, and that sounds very good. I'm just pointing out that this is one of the lowest areas here, and there's not much infiltration, as John pointed out, there, and it might be something to consider.
Never noticed ponding there, it's always in the back.
That was my, yeah.
In the back, in the,
Which-
all the way in the back, John?
Well, all
That whole
of this
area.
outside there is
Okay.
where you get the ponds.
Okay, well, that's gonna have to reach this drain, right?
And well, that is the low point here. So this, when it floods, even after just a good rain, the line of the water is basically here. This whole area is flooded.
Yeah.
So,
So you lose 8 spaces or something.
And you're this is your center line of the existing, right here?
that is the sewer main. Yep. And the gray area is the sewer easement. But to your point, John, that's why I was mentioning that I think that our model is conservative, and I'm harping on the fact that we're trying to correct an existing condition.
Right.
I didn't see too much ponding in that one corner either, and we're going from that 18-inch culvert pipe to, I think there's 6 or 7 of those Coltex and 2 foot of stone. So we're really drastically increasing the volume of storage and infiltration area. So,
So why is the easement on the north driveway if there's no pipe through there?
which,
That- We know that the system as constructed does not necessarily match where the easements are.
Okay,
So
so this is a village map that David Miller gave us. Well, I guess this is the area we're looking at here, right?
well, that's where that rear Coltex system is. The building scooches in right, to the east of
Yeah.
it.
I was
The
just
west.
curious why they have that northern leg of the easement when there's no pipe in there.
I'm wondering if there's a couple buildings tied into a single service line and
We
they've
know-
handled.
We know that that's the case. When they were doing some improvements to this parking lot, the building next door did not appear on the map to be hooked in, and so it was, you know, the sewer was filled with concrete, and then it backed up. So it was a connection that was made but not shown on the map. So there's possibly others that exist.
All right. So we're gonna leave a lot of that to the engineers to duke out. But we had other questions.
Sure.
Are more of our purview.
Do you want Warren to present the outside before we get?
Yeah,
into
we might as
questions?
well.
You want to do site plan first and then move to building, or?
Well, we've been sort of looking at the site plan, but yeah, you could talk about the front of it. We haven't really looked at the front.
You mean the front of the site or the front of the building?
Well, the front of the building and the site.
Go through all.
Yeah, up there.
And you guys can.
There were some proposals to, bring back trees and,
Yeah, I was gonna say, the only thing we didn't really talk about is landscape and lighting.
Yeah.
And so there is a landscape and lighting plan where we're showing
Right.
improvements to the front, and some plantings, I think, in the back. But yeah, mostly plantings in the front along the right of way. And was it all building mounted lighting? I don't recall.
Yes, there's that freestanding.
Right,
Which sheet is the landscaping sheet?
should be
Utilities.
the Chamber of Commerce
It's
building has been
C401.
moved.
401.
Yeah.
Frontier property.
C401.
Right, that's still the plan.
Yeah.
All that has been worked out with Frontier and they're okay with it
Yep, we have an agreement with Frontier for that and the overhang.
in the transformer.
Is this actually the correct footprint of that?
Now,
It's the relocated. If you go to the existing conditions,
it's over the property line on the existing conditions plan and it will be relocated.
Okay, is that part of the same plan set?
yep, it'll be on sheet 1.
Okay, there we go.
So that's the proposed conditions, and right below it,
I see, so we have some things going on in the front here.
if you scroll, oh no, it's shown there actually. There we go. So,
If you go to the existing conditions.
yeah, if you scroll further down,
Just go to the one
Next,
below.
next sheet?
it's the same sheet, it's just, right there you go.
It shows it without the building.
And that's the current location of the tourism shed. It shows it kind of at a skew over the property line.
And so regarding the transformer, there's actually, that's actually serving the Frontier building.
Oh, really? So they were
That's what
happy
we
to take it.
understand, so when we talked, yeah,
Right.
when we talked about removing it, they were okay with putting it on their property.
Okay. So instead of parking on that asphalt pad, people will be moved out to a new curb line that's in line with the other on-street parking. And presumably the bus will stop in the travel lane to pick up people, the way they sort of do now.
That's how we're gonna propose it. I know that, I'm anticipating comments on that when we ultimately go for the permit from the DOT.
Yeah.
So, I tried to reach out to,
Joe Taylor.
well, no, it was, Dutchess County Transit or something to try to get their feedback on it. Yeah, and I didn't get any feedback, so I assumed it was gonna be handled during DOT. That will be the plan. Either way, yeah, we'll be removing that kind of concrete apron
Yeah.
and restoring that asphalt to be more,
It does make parking awkward there.
Yeah.
Yes, and people trying to squeeze 3 cars in there, which sort of half blocks the driveways.
Right.
Yeah, I think it'll be much better to have a curb and define and street trees. It'll match up with everything to the north and south.
right.
As part of the comprehensive plan, I've actually proposed that there be a bus bulb out there so that you could have a shelter and everything else, but we're very early discussions. We haven't talked to Dutchess County Transit or anybody there, but I think we want to sort of make the transit more friendly than it is right now. That's the only bus stop in the village, and we might as well make it, comfortable and well lighted and, have a bench and all that sort of thing, a protected bench. So But that would work with whatever you put here.
Exactly.
Yeah. Because I think, I used to ride the bus a lot, and cars are always parked there, so they just pull up, load people, cars back up behind them, and they take off again. And it prevents them from having to pull back into traffic, which is hard when cars line up from the light. And also, DOT makes you have this huge, ramp in and ramp out to get a bus in and out of a side spot. And so therefore you'd end up losing parking on both sides because they would, so having the bus just stop in the middle of the road, they usually don't have a huge amount of passengers. People get in, get out.
That's what we're hoping.
Yes. So this should work one way or the other.
It will definitely make everything more defined. Right now, there's a lot going on there.
Yeah, there's a lot of little stuff too,
Telephone.
eyeglass dropping.
Yeah.
The last telephone, basic phone in Dutchess County, I think, is there. I wonder if they ever get any corner.
And is the landscaping, proposed landscaping on another sheet? In other words, here's the existing.
Can you go to sheet
This tree's
C401?
moving, that tree's going.
Yeah, if you go down to sheet 4.
C401. Keep going.
Keep going.
One more. There you go.
So that shows the 2 new trees in the right of way, and then plantings in front of the building.
Here?
Yep.
And then there's 2 existing trees on the Frontier property to the south that are gonna stay, right?
Right.
So there'll be 4 trees in that area.
Well, this one will stay, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and then there's another one that's not shown there
Yeah, on the south side
by
of
the
the
driveway.
entrance.
A bigger one, a big locust.
That, in the earlier sheet, it said that one was to be removed, right?
No, it's just to be trimmed.
Okay.
There's a branch that's sort of, the fire chief wanted to
Oh,
take
yeah,
off the lowest branch.
the south side. We have a call out on the first sheet that it's the low overhanging limbs just to be removed.
Yeah, the limbs
There
to
it is,
be
yeah.
not the tree.
Yeah, that's this one.
So, there,
I got a thing on this one.
Okay.
Phone to remain. I mean, I looked at that phone today, it's broken and is it being replaced with something that works or remove it?
that's up to whoever, I didn't even know there was a real phone company anymore that would do such a thing.
I like the nostalgia.
That's
But not a broken one.
Sculptural
It
effect.
takes 42 quarters to call someone. But
When I say broken, I mean the actual head
yeah,
thing is just smashed and pieces are missing.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, no, somebody just went like that. and-
I suspect they would be happy to remove it, but someone would have to do the legwork on who owns it and give them the permission to do that, because again, it's not on their property. It's in the village's right of way.
probably historic structure.
Yeah. So older than 30 years.
Part of the historic district, I think we're gonna designate.
Just remembered.
part of the tour.
Yeah. I had a couple of questions about the handicapped parking spaces. So the site plan shows on the existing that there are 3, but it looks like there's actually 2 physically out there. It may be the correct width. But I guess the question stems from, on the new plan, there's also 2 handicap parking spaces shown. So in the pre-development condition, we required handicap parking for something, 2 spaces. But now in the post-development condition, we only have still 2 spaces. So is that just a relocation of the same parking, or does that meet the allocation for this new building as well?
So the standard is one handicap space per 25 parking spaces typically.
Okay.
Those 3 previously striped spaces did not meet any code. They didn't have loading aisles or anything like that. So we were proposing 2 because that's what this site called for. And I don't believe that there was anything expressed yet that there was a need for additional, but, so barring any other circumstances that we're unaware of, 2 should be sufficient.
So it's unrelated to the use of the building, either for the commercial or for the apartments, or in the past condition, the hotel. There was no further demand on the handicap
Well,
spaces.
there
It was
will
just
be-
a function of number of parking spaces in the lot.
There will be one handicap unit, the bottom unit will be handicap accessible,
Right.
but the parking is just a function of the number of spaces.
But that handicapped accessible unit doesn't drive up the need for an additional parking space in any way?
I think the ADA code just says 25 to 50 needs 2,
Yeah.
50 to 70, you know, that sort of thing, it's just a progression.
Okay. So the
So they
unit
can go up
doesn't,
to 50 spaces, they have 37 or something, right?
Right.
So
I
you can
mean,
have more if you want, they kind of leave it to their discretion, so if you're like a medical facility, they're gonna have probably 10 handicap parking spaces right out front, because they know that they need that, you know, so.
no, I think the concern was more that would the handicapped unit take away one of those spaces right off the bat, and then we'd be left with one to serve whatever the 2 were serving prior.
Right.
And it sounds like it's just a function of number of parking and not
Right.
what's in the building at this point,
Correct.
unless it changes to medical use or something, to your point. Okay, so that makes some sense. That makes sense. And then the dumpster enclosure that you have there, is that for both the commercial and the residential units on this property, or is that for the adjacent properties?
So
In
that's
other words, how will trash from this building be handled for both commercial and residential? And is there a concern that we're going to have trash cans accumulating for the residents?
So that's an existing dumpster.
Right.
So that's a good question. I haven't looked at the,
Wait, that's an existing dumpster?
yeah.
Do we know
There
who
is
it's
one there,
serving?
There's one there now,
Yeah.
just not an enclosure.
Interesting. I don't. Okay.
Yeah, the intent of the question was to try to avoid,
Make sure that
a
it's
number
large
of
enough.
individual
Right.
service
Yeah, I think
cans.
as I remember, the restaurant to the north has rollout cans,
Yes.
because I've seen them come out with those, so they don't use that dumpster. So I think that the
Frontier.
dumpster must have been there for, what,
Frontier maybe.
Frontier maybe?
Yeah.
But I don't know. I've never seen trash accumulate back there. Is there going to be an enclosure or just a dumpster?
We were proposing an enclosure.
Okay, good,
Yeah.
Where's the detail? Oh, it's on.
It's on
the
that same
landscaping
sheet
plan.
actually.
okay.
But, yeah, I'd be curious to understand how the trash will be handled, because there's not a whole lot of spaces around the building itself. If cans were to be left around the building, it seems like it could definitely
Yeah, well,
impact the
You
traffic.
think about it, 4 units
Estimate how much it's gonna generate.
and a
Yeah.
pretty small commercial
Small
space.
retail,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
As long as the adjacent properties that are owned by the same person aren't using that dumpster.
Right,
It seems
that
like
would
a
be a
dumpster
question.
would be more than adequate, but,
Right.
It seems like it.
Yeah.
Right, if it ever switched to a restaurant, I think we may have to take into look
Yeah.
at that.
you might have to meet your parking regs again then.
Yeah.
That too.
that would open the
You
whole
should stay away from restaurants.
Rhinebeck apparently likes restaurants.
Yeah, I suppose the
But anyway,
cost sharing would
see
be,
if you can get an answer to that question.
Yep.
Just to be sure that other commercial properties are not using that dumpster.
Will do.
Or Frontier, I don't know what they do with their trash.
yeah, somebody's paying for it.
I don't know if they create any trash, really, you know. It's
Right.
just a switching station or something in it.
Allegedly. And then another question just related to, I'm responding to sort of how tight the building is to the roadways that serve it. And on the architectural plans, there are 2 ground-mounted heat pumps or low-mounted, wall-mounted heat pumps that are called out to serve the commercial space and the residential or PTAC units, but they're not shown in the site plan. So just a question relating to the northern driveway, and do those units impact the northern driveway as shown on the architecturals? There they are in the 2 white boxes.
Yeah, why don't you show the site plan again?
At the scale I have, it's tough to tell how much space is actually between the building and the roadway.
Yeah, I had the same question. It looked like they're pretty tight there.
They are very tight. Yeah.
Are they wall mounted or ground?
Yeah, they're typically ground mounted,
Ground
right
mounted?
against the building. Yeah.
And you might need bollards
Yes.
on the upside of that.
Bollards, right.
I know there's a curb, but
Yeah.
a garbage
You
truck
can
could
jump
come
the
by
curb.
and take that thing off.
Yeah, right. We're a very high vehicle,
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that would be something to clarify.
Yep.
And then similarly, just thinking of the logistics of this building and how it would function. So when residents who all use the front door, except for the handicap unit, right? So we have 3 units using the front entry and 1 using the rear. So when residents are moving in, moving out, but more importantly on a daily basis or a weekly basis, when they're coming in with packages or from a trip and things like that, you know, it's quite a long distance to park in any of the parking spots at the rear of the building. Depending on your luck, how close of a spot you actually get. And then carting your groceries, your luggage, or your new purchase from IKEA now to the front of the building and in the front door. So I was just curious to know if there'd been any thought to how residents would function if one of the parking spaces could be designated a short-term loading zone for them or something to get them closer to that front door, because it seems like the human tendency would be to block the driveway in some fashion or the bus stop and leave hazards on or something. But it does seem like there's a bit of a functional, like practicality issue with having to park so far in the rear and then have just so little spot to pull your car over and get something big or heavy out of it to bring up the front door and then go up some number of flights of stairs and then back.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very realistic, concern. We could designate a loading zone. That enforcement is always a challenge with that, but certainly because it's a private property, it's not like a street, but that certainly would be an option, short-term parking loading zone.
Yeah.
Might up the parking
Can't they
space by one.
access from the back as well?
Yeah, also,
No,
No, it's 1 unit
I
now.
had a question about that as well, given the access. So the current, here we go. So in other words, here's the floor plans. In the new proposal, the only access to any of the floors is through this front door stairwell. In the original plan, there were stairwells in rear and in front.
Right.
So, what are the allowances that are made for safety, for fire safety, et cetera, for egress, now that there's only one way in and out of each floor?
Yeah, there are different requirements for hotel use and, residential use, apartment
Right.
use. And so certainly the residential units have to have egress windows that could be exited if you went to a ladder, but from a fire truck. But there is not a requirement, given the small size of this building and the number of units, that there be 2 stairs.
Right.
Will it be
But there will
sprinkled?
be sprinklers.
Yeah, it would be sprinkler, correct.
Yeah.
Will there be fire escapes necessary from any of the upper floors or just a fire truck's ladder to get in?
No fire escapes.
No fire escapes on the exterior of the building?
No.
Yeah, I think there's if you have so many units, you have to have multiple, but if you're in a small building like this,
Right,
it's
it's
just
quite a
impractical
small
to have
building.
2 stairwells.
Provided you have fire sprinklers.
Yeah.
Yes.
But when they went to sprinklers, I think they changed the code for things like that.
It does, yeah.
Who would look at that? Would the fire department look at that, or just the code enforcement officer?
When we
In
submit
terms
for building
of legal
permit,
egress?
the building inspector will not be able to issue a permit unless it meets code.
Okay,
So,
okay.
I mean, we could refer it to him now, but that would be a
All right.
prerequisite of issuance of a building permit.
And then that front door that serves the residential units, that would be locked or unlocked on a regular basis? In other words, the residents would be able to use some sort of code or key to get in, or
Right.
it would be just free access to that
No, I
hallway?
think for security reasons, it would have to be probably card access.
So then,
And we
just,
could give, some places are now giving codes to UPS, Amazon.
that was my question, is then, so package deliveries building up on the sidewalk, that would be dealt with through the carriers having access?
There's
in
a
some
small
form?
alcove on the first floor where you could drop packages.
We still have to go in though.
Right.
Yeah.
Hmm. Okay, we can talk about that.
Yeah, it just with several units sharing that door, it does seem like the tendency of people these days is to shop online and,
Right.
for boxes to accumulate at the front of the building there, on the sidewalk near the bus
Very
stop.
easily.
Yeah, exactly. Or just getting wet in the rain and just not looking great.
Is there space to do like a vestibule with 2 doors with the inner one locked?
Not really, but at the back, we'll probably have mailboxes, and that would be a place that practice with that.
Okay.
And then just with respect to utilities, we talked about the heat pumps for the commercial, and then I see the PTAC for heating and cooling of the residential units. So then, just talk briefly about what the cooking, the clothes dryers are. In other words, is everything beyond that point electric as well, or is there any use of natural gas, propane in this case?
Well, we don't have natural gas
Would be
here,
propane,
and
yeah.
so basically it would be all electric. There's really no place to put propane tanks.
That was
And,
why I'm asking.
You know, so we're pretty limited in that. There will not be washers and dryers in the units. There is the ability to put a laundry room in the lower level in the basement. And that would be, you know, could be electric and they'd be vented out the side, but it wouldn't be gas again, it would be, you know, all electric.
Okay, so we don't need to take into consideration any sort of gas tank, whether buried
No.
or above ground at this point. It's
No,
just
we
all
really
electric
we have no
service.
place to put those. Really.
Understood.
So you're putting a laundry room in the basement?
Yes, well, I mean,
Potentially.
that would be the plan.
And then, I suppose in the site plan, last question that I had is just the parking bumpers in this parking lot and the adjacent CVS parking lot are sort of notorious for not being in the parking lot, but being in the lawn and on the fences and things like that. So, these are new, I assume, bumpers at this point, or are they just reconfiguration of what's there?
They would be new.
They'd be new,
Yeah,
okay.
It'd be concrete,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Concrete.
it looks like a lot of them are, I mean, there's some plastic, some concrete out there, but they would be, is there a spec that, you know,
There's actually
would help us ensure that they,
Yeah, it might be, you know,
Yeah,
yeah, I
there's
see
a-
there's a spec in the plan, is
Yeah.
that the sort of latest and greatest thinking in terms of parking bumpers and keeping them in place? I know they have to move to some extent.
Well, these shouldn't move.
Okay.
usually they have like
It'll move your-
rebar on your drive.
Move.
Yeah, they're gonna be thinned.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're 6-inch thick, well, 6-inch high by 10-inch wide concrete bumpers, you know, with steel rebar reinforcement, and then they'll have rebar pins into the ground 30 inches, so.
So they're really designed as real stops, but again, if you hit them with enough force and a big enough vehicle, you can go over them and eventually, you know, damage them.
And then you mentioned the parking lot would be, you were careful not to say repaved, but, you know, resurfaced, or some word that you had used that stopped short of saying repaved. So I guess related to these bumpers, if we're not gonna have a new surface entirely to pin them into, you know, just maybe explain what's going on in the parking lot beyond the areas that are disturbed for the different easements and the utility connections underground.
I think given the extent of the work, I don't see how we don't resurface the entire thing.
You're gonna have to regrade it to get the,
Yeah, I don't think Christian meant that it wouldn't be repaid, it just meant that the configuration overall is staying the same, but certainly
Yeah.
with the grading involved for the, get water to the infiltrators and so
Okay,
forth.
so new macadam, fresh
They have to,
striping, and
Yes.
then a good surface, level surface to pin
Yes.
the bumpers into, and then by extension, better drainage and overland flow.
Yep, and there's a fair amount of curb work too, just to formalize and delineate the extents of this parking area. Because if you look at the existing conditions compared to the proposed, you'll see that you know, there's some areas that we're kind of realigning, we're adding some pavement, trying to enlarge some of the stalls that were really undersized as they exist now. So yeah, this will be, it'll look like a brand new parking lot. So it will be a brand new parking lot. So
In the same way.
yeah, exactly. A refreshment to an area.
Refreshment.
Really needs it. Yeah.
you wanna keep going?
Well, I suppose by extension, then, on the architecturals, we talk about stormwater, and there's, obviously you've referenced the stormwater connection into the manhole. or the culvert. The architecturals though didn't seem to show the downspouts or any of the gutters. So can you just give us a little more detail as to what those might look like and where they'd be located?
Well, yes, the gutters will run along the eaves, the north and south sides of the building. With downspouts at the rear corner, the piece of the building is gabled at the front. Obviously, we can pick up the water on the west side there, and that would have to be conducted to either the driveway or basically, to flow with the regraded driveway to the back, or in a buried pipe, which, is always a maintenance issue, can clog, and it's kind of hard to clean those out. So, but the bulk of the building is a gable running east-west, and so that's going to be all picked up at downspouts, the two corners there, the northeast and southeast corners.
Yeah, I think the long run was where I was specifically wondering just how many liters would be running down the building at that point. Whether we would be able to accomplish it with one seems like.
Right, it really depends on how much pitch we can get and get a decent flow, and it's a fairly long structure, even though it's not a big building, So if we needed to introduce another leader, we certainly have the ability to do that. And then the question is, then do we do a buried pipe or just have like a swale along the side of the building? The problem is it's so tight on the property that we don't have a lot of opportunity to do that. So the best way to handle any water coming down would be to use the regrading that we're doing anyway to get it back to the point where we can go in the catch basin. And so the water that's coming down on the north side, the driveway is going to have that pitch back to the catch basin. Is it 3 that you're putting up in the middle?
Yeah, not the whole thing though. This will have to be buried pipe. It's likely going to be all going to go right into a buried pipe and back to the catch basin.
Right.
So I thought you would say manifold underground
Good
that
deal.
would feed it into the catch
And
basin.
we'll make that big enough with clean out, so it's,
Yeah. Right, that's the key, is really having clean outs often
Yeah.
enough to be able to.
and have that manifold big enough to where it, it's not going to get clogged up with leaves too easily.
Right,
So,
right.
I think it's definitely something worth showing on the drawing.
Sure.
Just, figuring out just how much flow we can handle in the gutter before it has to go down a leader and where those leaders would be located.
Yeah.
Just given the village
Sure.
center designation here. And then, have you thought about the materials the gutters are made of? I mean, obviously they would be metal, but are we talking, painted aluminum? Are we talking copper?
The owner is very fond of copper gutters, so that would be my expectation.
Okay, very nice.
Do you know the depth of the water table on this property?
so we did test pits down to 9-10 feet deep, but we didn't encounter any water.
Typical for the building.
Yeah, I mean, it was all gravel, sandy, it was beautiful material.
The reason I bring that up is 35 years ago, my neighbor, a few blocks over, put it in the Rhinebeck health food store and was not like Mr. Bender. He was trying to cut corners, and the engineer at the time said, you got to put all these catch basins in. No, I don't need to do that. Planning board said, yes, you do. He didn't do it. They did stop work orders on him. He still didn't do it, and then eventually sold it. And when the new owner did it, the site conditions went in, but when they were digging the property, they hit water at, I believe, 5 or 6 feet. And then the whole parking lot was covered with clay, and then it filled up to this deep.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, so,
Wow.
and it's only a couple blocks over, so.
Yeah,
Yeah, I would expect, you had to hit water at some point. I was surprised that we were able to get that deep. We started to see, I'll have to go back and look. Maybe we did start to see it at 10 feet, but I know that it was deep, if anything. It was a while ago. But yeah, that's the issue with, if you do hit water in those gravelly soils, it becomes very difficult to deal with. So it just flows.
He had a dry spell, he got his foundation in, and then it filled up like a swimming pool.
Yeah.
So that the only difference I see between the plan on the elevations and the plans a couple of years ago are that on the south elevation, instead of identical windows of size and elevation, that this window here, which was the same as all the others, is a little one. Whereas the prior, when it was a hotel, it was another matching window to this and in this, all of the windows in the same elevation.
Right, there's been some modest changes to the fenestration on the north and south sides
Yeah.
to accommodate the different program
Yeah.
for an apartment. And so in an apartment, you have some kitchens and things that, can't have full height windows very practically, but they're very limited.
And so that's this window here, which is above the
That is that
6
window
and 7
there.
foot.
That's
And
right.
what is this little line? Is this showing that the window opens?
That's correct.
Was it a casement window instead of a?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because if it were double hung, it would have to have a horizontal at the midpoint.
Right.
So the casement can just swing out.
Okay.
Are the rest of the windows, with the exception of the storefronts and what are shown as casements, double hungs in the building?
They're double hungs. In some cases, if they, needed to be a casement for egress, then they would have a simulated check rail, so it'd be a casement designed to look like a double hung.
They have muttons on
Yes.
the exterior.
They all have buttons, and again, they would have a check rail, either actual check rail if it's double hung or simulated check rail.
You should put a label on those to make sure that,
What's that?
you should put a label on those windows to make sure that we're getting the exterior muttons.
Oh, yeah, well, that's in the plans and specifications.
Okay, I didn't see it.
I saw the exterior buttons, I think they're called out as fiberglass painted, but are we talking simulated divided lights? Or are we
Yeah,
talking
simulated divided
grills
lights with a
applied
spacer
to
bar in the
windows?
middle. Yeah, we don't do removable muntins because they get removed and never go out.
So they are
Is there?
True
so,
SDLs.
Sorry, Warren, is there a schedule of those where you said that is designated in? See, this-
One of the exterior elevations had those notes. We incorporated that a couple years ago when we went through
Okay.
that.
I didn't see it on the plans.
Yeah, but it's not on these plans.
So we may just have to add it back to this
Yes.
set.
Okay, I know there are some notes there on the drawing, but I'll have to look and see if somehow.
Yeah,
if
some of the
revised
notes
drawing-
didn't seem to make it, the materials notes and things like that.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
and
there's
those will be added back. Yeah, thanks for noting that.
Yeah.
You're gonna take off the hub.
What's that?
Take off the hub.
I mean, we left it for now just because it's
I
the
don't
same
have a sign
project
application, it's all
with the
right.
same.
I don't have a sign application, it's all right.
Yeah, but there's no, oh, you mean
Doesn't matter.
the words.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you meant the title.
No.
Yeah, you should just say proposed sign or
Sure.
something,
Yeah, we can say.
unless you're gonna
We
repair
don't
cars
want to do
on the
anything that
first
makes
level.
Ryan upset.
Not that it affects the site plan, the ground plan, the elevations or the floor plans, but is the owner open to making one or more of these units affordable rentals? There's a lot of funding available from federal, state, local, county that would contribute, that could be utilized. I mean, there are some cases where you can get up to $90,000 per unit from certain funding agencies if you agree to comply with affordable housing regulations.
We can raise it. Generally, you need more than 4 units for
Mhm,
it to be cost effective to provide an affordable unit.
mhm,
And there's only 4 units in this building.
right.
So I'm not sure it makes economic sense, but I'm happy to raise,
Okay.
the concern.
And I'd be happy to put the owner in touch with some people that know, or they're experts in all of the available funding options for
Mhm.
different types of things. Be happy to put put them together just for an informational meeting, if possible. Sometimes you meet and you realize maybe there's something more promising than you thought before, and that, I believe that would be worth investigating.
I'm sure they'd be open at that, Tim.
Yeah.
Sure.
Or on the elevations, especially I think we're looking at the north here, right?
Yeah, that's north.
Yeah. Would the owner be willing just to separate the ganged windows just a little bit to allow them to look truly mulled together, like more of a historic window would be?
Yeah,
a little
we
bit of a-
discussed that.
Yeah.
I think we can do that, sure.
Yeah, I think it would go a long way to just adding a little bit more of the historic village center type feel. And then related, it does look like, and could just be the scale of the drawing, that the windows are more picture frame in terms of their trim, rather than having sort of more of a historic
Yeah,
weighting
no,
of a
they
top
wouldn't
piece
be
and a
picture
true
frame,
sill.
that's a pet peeve of mine too. The programs actually are rather limited in what they show as options,
Sure.
except for large details, but we don't picture frame windows on the inside or the outside.
Okay, so could we anticipate a true window sill with
Yes,
sort
a
of
sill
proper
with-
weighting of headpiece and side piece with
Some projection
a mull and
of the
projection?
The sill
sills
would
and
project.
some indentation of the window.
What's that?
Some projection of the sill and
There would be, absolutely.
indentation of the window, so you get some shadow going on.
Well, certainly on the area with the brick facade, with the hardyboard facade, there's not as much depth to work with on that, but the sill would project in any event, and the trim itself projects out from the siding.
And it's smooth hardy board,
Yes,
put it on the specs.
yes.
You don't want faux bois?
But they don't want fake grain.
You know, it's not.
Just out of curiosity, I have a question. This line here that's grayed out,
Mhm.
what is it? Is that actually a drip roof?
There is a pitch on that entablature, yep.
So the trim comes down flat over the hardy board here and here, and there's a little drip? So is this?
Yeah, because that's a cornice below that
I don't
project.
see it forming, it doesn't seem like it's extending, it's just coming to this facade here?
It basically takes the entablature in front of the building and turns the corner and runs it back along the sides of the
Okay.
area with the brick veneer. So
Okay,
there is a pitch for drainage.
okay, so that it's not running straight down the brick.
No, it's not running straight down. Right, there's a break in the plane there between the siding above that entablature molding and then the brick below.
Okay.
And then we obviously have to have a gutter below that if we're gonna intercept that water, but that's a relatively small amount of water because most of the
Yeah.
water is running down the gable, you know. But it's another opportunity for a little copper accent, so it certainly
On
will be
those-
copper flashing.
On those south side windows, in the previous plan, they were hallway windows, and so if Frontier sold out someday and a builder
Correct.
wanted to go right up against this, which is allowed by code,
That's correct,
those windows would have to go away on the south side.
that's correct.
And your plans for apartments can handle all that.
They can,
Yeah.
right, all
It
the
looked like it was
key
designed so
rooms,
that,
right, have exposures to the north, the east, and the west.
I once lived in an apartment with only northern light, and it wasn't fun, but.
No, I understand. And we are very conscious of the fact that, yes, if they decided to build a building there, we would have to close up the,
Right, it's unlikely, but
it could happen.
yes, could happen. All right, and that's in a note somewhere on the plan, as I
That was
remember seeing
actually,
it.
yeah, that was
Yeah.
worked out with them, and I think in part of the agreement with the, but it could be added to these plans too. In fact, there was a note on the
I
plans.
think there was a note on this
Yes.
plan.
Yeah. and it's not
I just
there.
wanted to confirm that you could indeed do it.
Yes, we
without
had that
interfering
in
with the
mind
apartment
as we
plans.
looked at the transition from, hotel rooms to apartments. That was certainly one of the foremost considerations.
Okay,
Victoria, did you say?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, just on that topic, did you say that the detail about the window trim projecting out past the plane of the building, it was something from the prior approval?
Oh, it was,
Had been
there was
resolved
an
at this point?
overhang. So the building overhang actually
Yeah.
crosses the property line a tiny
Eve.
bit. It's decorative, and the board requested it, but in the event that they ever have to remove it, we did show an alternate, just flat facade.
yeah, it would be butt up against something
On the,
else, so you wouldn't
Right.
notice.
the south side there,
Yeah,
yeah,
on the
right.
south side.
And then you
there's-
mentioned that earlier because you had worked that into the agreement with the neighboring property owner, so that's,
Yes, we have a signed license agreement with Frontier
When you're
for
planning.
the overhang.
okay. So that's what you're referring to, so they've consented to it now, but if they sell, there might be an issue with it in the future, which is what
Right.
John's point is.
Correct.
Yeah, they have no problem with it as is, but they don't know what the future holds.
One more question on the windows. I'm curious to know how these upper windows will be treated here on both the south and the north elevation. So approaching it from the north or the south, this facade is only like 6 inches thick here, right? So there's really nothing behind here, is there?
What do you mean there's nothing?
In other words, okay, so you've got these windows on the side.
Yes,
Right. Let's see if I look at the other side. It's going to be the same on both sides, I guess, yeah.
very similar, right?
Right, so you have these, they look like windows leading into some space.
Yeah, there's an apartment
Oh, okay.
within it.
So these windows are in the third floor apartment then?
Yes.
Ah.
big two-bedroom apartment.
And
Yeah.
the building is
Yeah.
essentially a box,
Yeah, yeah.
but it's a little thicker on the front quarter
Because of the veneer.
because of the
and
extra
trim.
brick veneer. So it's only,
Uh-huh.
sticks out the width of one brick.
Right.
Right,
But you have the center window there, you've marked, Jeff, with the cursor.
yeah.
And then the two ones on either side, the quarter circle windows.
That's this one and this one?
Correct.
Okay,
And the same thing on the south side.
yeah,
One of those is in the stair. Well, it's on the same plan on the left-hand side. The left-hand plan is the third floor.
yes, yes,
Right. Right, so those windows are there.
okay. So, let me go back up to the elevation once more. So this line here represents, is this actually the ceiling line of the interior of the apartment?
Yeah, over on the right-hand side, it has a little sort of elevation symbol.
Yes, yeah, okay. So what is this gonna be, knee walls, or what's the, oh no, it's because it's only 6 inches thick, I guess. Okay.
Yeah, it'll be a little lower on the front gable.
Right, there'd be a knee wall at the front where the roof slopes back, but
How does that P-TAC unit work there, where it intersects the mini roof line and also into the frieze board?
it's got a grill, but, you know.
Right, but just in terms of the detail of rainwater not running directly at it and breaking those multiple planes up. There- And also just even aesthetically, it's kind of in a funny place, is there?
It seemed the least awkward place to put it in that facade, but,
Yeah, I see, so this is the knee wall right here on the third floor
Yeah.
apartment, leading.
the knee
looking
wall
out
is right up at the front, and then there's a
Looking at the dormer.
ceiling sort of break line there with the gutter.
Uh-huh. I see.
Yeah, it's a fairly visible facade, and you just have that sort of unit.
That will have to have
Front and center.
special detailing around it, because it's unique from all the other on there.
Yeah.
It's usually, you know, in the construction drawing phase where we deal with that rather than
Go back to the
schematics.
Floor plan, John?
Yeah.
Could you, I've not used a lot of those units, but can you fabricate a grill, a sort of
Oh,
false
yes,
grill,
yeah, very
so
often
that
they are.
We could, follow the contours of the roof line and the frieze board.
It would be, of course, it absolutely could be done, yeah.
It's probably like the big dead ringer that, this is sort of a modern apartment building
Mm.
as opposed to something historic. And because of where it is, as you head south, you would see it quite, I think, prominently, even walking down the sidewalk,
It would be, right.
the very obstructed sidewalk with lots of railings in it. But yeah, it seems like if something could be done to it, to either set it inboard or create some sort of structure around it that would still allow it to get the right airflow and just tone it down in appearance. It's just that one dead ringer of like, this is a multifamily building. So love to see if there's something that could be done to tone it down.
Old buildings always had quirks like that in it.
Yeah, the
They
quirks.
tend to, right. We just make sure they function and don't leak and all that good stuff.
Yeah, it just feels like a modern quirk.
No, I
as opposed to,
understand.
an older quirk. I mean, if it felt like an older quirk, if there was some way to do that, that would be great too. If we could create
Right.
something, a fake fire escapey little piece or something around an old piece of iron or something that looks like.
Yeah, well,
it's part of
sometimes people
something.
actually do little projected balconies in front of them, to kind of hide them.
Yeah,
I don't know if it would work at that window, but that's, that sort of option exists.
Put a wood grill on it.
A wood grill.
That way you can manufacture it, then put a screen behind it.
I'm sure we'll come up with
Yeah.
a creative solution.
yeah, I think that the effort would definitely just be worth it, just
I
because of the
hear
prominence
what
of the
you're
building.
saying,
and-
I absolutely agree.
and there's obviously a lot of effort. I mean, that, I could see there's effort being put into the way this building looks and, some of the materials being chosen, so that's just layering on. We talked about the smooth hardy, which is great. The other sort of dead ringer for me generally on a new old building is modern bricks, right? So if there's any ability to specify, tighter grout joints, more of a historic grout joint, more in the half-inch range, 3/8 inch range. One of those dead giveaways of veneer brick or a more modern brick seems to be a larger grout joint, mortar joint in the bricks.
Not just the uniformity of the brick?
The uniformity of the brick doesn't help either.
Yeah.
But certainly it just seems like, true structural brick has compressed and
Right.
has weight on it, and the mortar joints tend to be smaller just because of the weight pushing out. So that's one thing, if that could be specified in some way, just to try to keep that under control. I think it would go a long way for aesthetics and probably not at any cost.
Yeah, no, we did actually, among the notes that Don was referencing, we did have a particular brick blend that
Saw
was
that.
specified, that,
Yeah.
looks a little more antique, but,
Yeah,
the joints is absolutely something to.
yeah,
look into.
joints would help a lot, given the village center. And then similarly, just also the length of the bricks. I know we can't really get away these days from the consistency of the bricks, but newer bricks tend to be a little bit shorter, as you know. And so if we got more towards a true 8-inch, 8.5-inch dimension of brick, if that's available.
Yeah, right, it really is a question of what's out there, and a lot of times you'll see things that are like in the catalog, and they say, well, that's not available.
Right.
We don't make that, particularly for a small quantity, so it can be a bit of a challenge.
Sure.
And reusing old bricks, as you know, has its own hazards.
Well, for sure.
Yeah.
But, if there's a choice,
Yeah.
that would be another one of those things that would, I think, do a little bit to make the brick look a little bit more authentic. I don't have too much else in terms of questions, and I apologize, I'm sort of new to this application.
It's
so
only
this
fair.
is the first time I'm
Right.
officially seeing the
If we
building.
come back, you get to ask every question you want, again, if you want.
Oh, the only other, I almost forgot it, but on the rear elevation, so on the east elevation, the other sort of dead giveaway, there's a few elements back here, obviously, that feel much more modern and today's tastes and choices. But the biggest one is that entrance into that lower apartment. And the rule it violates for me, just from the little I know of sort of historic architecture, is the side light is a much different grill pattern than the door, and it really sort of breaks up that historic look that wraps around the building. So I just had wondered if some different glass pattern could be chosen for there, or maybe a transom instead of a side light could be chosen.
Sure,
But-
yeah, I don't know why that's shown differently. It ought to be possible to match the grill pattern or the muntin pattern of a door with the side light.
Yeah, so it just seems like, maybe there's something just to reference, because you had a lot of good references of historic buildings and photos and things that you were pulling elements from, and I appreciate that. I saw, the stone lintels and things like that. But this door in particular just felt a little bit like what it is rather than
The
something
door
else.
itself, or specifically the door?
The door,
side light?
I would say the door and side light combo. I've looked around the village a little bit just to see some older doors, and there's examples where there's divided light windows and the doors are actually clear,
Yeah.
single light,
Right,
or there's transoms above, or the side lights are dealt with a lot differently in the older
Right.
buildings, it seems.
well, that's a very good point. I mean, the side light may not need to be there at all. I'm not sure it adds much to that. Particularly if it's a door with glass, you'll have some visibility issues there.
Mhm.
So I think we could probably lose that, and then it would be less of a concern problem.
Yeah, it just feels like something I've seen quite a bit in
Right.
more modern
I understand what
architecture,
you're saying.
entering lobbies of clubhouses and things like that. That seems to be
Right.
a go-to combination,
Mhm.
and could be done maybe a little differently.
Right, generally, if you have two side lights, it's fairly easy to get a balance, but when there's one, it's a little awkward.
Yeah, it seems to just throw the proportion on.
That's a good observation.
Do you think those lights along that northern alley are gonna get knocked down?
Well, they're high enough up that,
The garbage truck
unless,
won't take them out?
somebody has those enormous mirrors on the side of a really large truck, but, the idea was that people could walk back along there to
Yeah,
the
no,
parking lot.
I think
so
some
kind of a
lighting is a
nice
good
feature.
thing. I'm just,
Yeah.
make sure that it's on the fat part of that curb rather than.
Yeah, right, there is actually a curve.
There's a little room.
Little curve.
emphasize a little, but there is some,
Was 2 feet?
maybe at the wide part, not even.
Any more sort of comments? I wanted to talk about process a little bit.
Just one question about the drop curb that's in this patio or this entry space. Does that mean that this entire space is raised 6 inches from the parking surface? Or is this actually a 6-inch high curb?
It's a mountable curve.
Well, it has to be an access anyway onto that, to the accessible unit.
Yeah, that's my point. This is an ADA.
Yeah.
This needs to be accessible. They shouldn't have to be stepping over something.
Right.
Are they stepping up onto a 6-inch rise to get to their door?
They would have to be able to
Yeah.
roll up to get to a door. Right.
What's that, 6 foot? Is that the distance between the planters or the distance of
There's
the
actually-
accessible ramp there?
That should be designating the break in the curb.
Okay, for an accessible
Yeah.
level
Yeah, because there's
area.
16 feet there, right, between the back of where the door is and the edge of the...
Yes. Does it say 16 or 10?
Doesn't the
This
apparatus
says
movement
10.
hit it too at the corner?
And that's why it's mountable.
That's the
Yeah.
mountable, not just
Right.
the ADA or not because of the ADA.
And why, there's not a planter on that far corner?
That's
Yeah,
correct.
exactly.
That's
That is
correct.
why.
Because the fire truck could make the corner, but we anticipated they're not gonna be the perfect driver.
Right.
He was pretty good when he was out there. I was impressed.
And we shortened up that patio quite a bit, so
Right.
that
Yeah,
curve
we did.
That's right.
Yeah.
and make that curve a little easier. So that patio is gonna probably be the ADA unit's sort of private balcony,
It
or
will, yeah.
patio.
Right, because it doesn't offer access to anything else.
Right, and it's fairly small now. It used to be a
Right.
lot larger in the first drawings.
Right.
Well, and the windows are there.
Yeah.
Just sitting there.
Where are the
That
mailboxes?
means-
Yeah. So it's a little extra perk there.
Yeah.
It's at the front.
Get a
Back of
bench.
the front lobby.
But you should call out the ramp area.
Yep.
Yes. Right.
So we know it works.
Right.
So my memory is when we did this the first time, we were in the middle of the pandemic and did it all virtual,
We did.
which isn't the best for public comments.
We actually got a lot of
public
participation,
comments,
more than usual.
Yes, there was a full screen.
There was.
But I'm thinking we should probably at least run one public hearing as part of, since it's a new amendment, and that way there would be no complaints that people who don't have computers or aren't technically Zoom credible, didn't have a chance,
I mean, that's fine. We have to refer it to county planning anyways.
right?
So, and there's some changes that you've asked for.
That's what I was hoping is,
Yeah, we're
so
going
that,
to another meeting anyway.
how soon can you set a
If that's the
public hearing?
plan, then we should look at February 21st.
Is that okay?
Let me just check my calendar.
They came up with that.
I think I have a meeting that night.
Because of notice. That's the scheme.
It's, well, I mean, we could try February 7th, but I don't know if you guys are gonna be ready by that time.
Have you submitted to the county?
Oh, no, Ryan, I mean,
I
Ryan made that
have,
submission.
they need the hard copy
Okay,
right now.
Well, I mean, let's set it for when it needs to be set, and then we'll make it work.
so it's either the 7th or the 21st. 7th is kind of pushing it, but
I don't know if it's really necessary for us. I guess the question is, which things are critical that you need a response on in time
Well,
for
the
the
other
public
thing
hearing?
is the village engineers has not seen this yet.
yeah, I think they need some
They've
time.
only seen the lodging facility use. They have not seen the apartment use yet.
The public.
No, they said the village engineers, so it hasn't been referred until the planning board.
Oh, so
review.
right,
This has been
the
referred to
comment
the village
today
engineers.
was on
Right.
the old plans.
Right,
But,
so they haven't seen the infiltration chambers or any of that sort of,
They have.
No, they have those plans.
The only thing they
Had
haven't
those
seen is the
September.
revised parking table,
okay.
so.
It shouldn't change any of the
All right.
drainage. What might change is the wastewater usage and water usage, but
Which will go down.
it'll be a reduction.
Yeah, Do we need to circulate lead agency again, or
I
we're
mean,
already done on that?
we've requested that you reaffirm your prior seeker review because we've already had sign off from DOT and DOT, the fire company,
Right.
water, wastewater, looked at it last time. So, I mean, the village water, wastewater.
And the
So,
seeker impacts are less than they were before
yes,
on all
we've
counts.
lessened the parking spaces, we've lessened the number of people in the building.
So, I think we could do that at the next meeting and hold a public hearing whenever it's convenient for you, and we think the engineer would be able to do what it needs to do. I think it'd be safer to do the 21st. but-
Okay. Are you guys available?
We can, lead agency tonight, reaffirm.
I don't think we need to, do we need to reaffirm lead agency? If they
Put
sign
an
up, you're the
amended-
lawyer, I don't have a
Put
lawyer.
an amended site plan approval, so.
Yeah.
I
You don't need
know
to
that.
reaffirm the agency, you could reaffirm your seeker review tonight.
I think I'd rather
Wait till
wait
you hear
until the
back.
public has a chance to weigh in, we could do it all at
Yeah.
once.
Sure, sure.
And so Ryan's gonna send to county, we're gonna schedule the hearing, Ryan will do the public notices, and we'll work on getting the edits. But the edits are not necessary for the public hearing. If we get them in, great, but they were more,
Would be
We're
great.
We're gonna incorporate everything we talked about.
Yeah, and I think the edits are important to the public hearing, though. I think that's,
Plus, yeah, certainly you should update what you can.
Right,
yeah.
yeah.
The more complete it is, the more likely we are to decide on what we're gonna do.
What would,
So-
what would
We
be,
have, if there's no major public comments, we have approved on the same night. And since this has been something we've looked over and the site plan hasn't changed that much. If we have the engineering comments and we don't have a big outcry, in theory.
well, what's interesting is that when we went through this last time during the pandemic, the majority of the public comments received had to do with providing housing for people that needed it and not providing more rooms for tourists.
Yes.
So I think this will be a welcome change to those people.
I would think, but you never know.
We've been surprised.
And there's always those people who don't like any change.
Sure.
In other words, a certain amount of, it's an ugly architecture and that sort of stuff,
Which we
because it's a new building.
vehemently disagreed with, right?
where your
Yeah,
things
it's
go?
all in the eye of the beholder, right?
But there was some of that, as I remember.
Right.
All right, anything else tonight? We can
I
do.
just got a question, not on this property, but the apartment that we approved above Croig's and Berkshire Hathaway and
It was
everything like that.
6384, yeah.
Has that been rented and is done and that's an apartment now?
Did they get it CO? I know that it's been,
Not signed yet, we just got the sprinkler report.
So there's nobody living there?
I mean, I don't think they just finished maybe a week ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so the question that was going, and somebody told me that it was living there, and I'm like, well, why is there an apartment for rent? But if it's not done, and there's a sign on the building.
They may have identified someone to lease it.
All right, but
The
when
sign-
somebody's in there, they can take that sign off.
Yeah, I'll ask them to take the sign down.
The other thing I'd like to ask on that property while we're here is there's a drop off from the sidewalk to the, what remains of asphalt apron between the street trees. I'm about that high. So anybody who walks down that sidewalk, especially at night, could turn their ankle or break their ankle. It's a real hazard. It's the biggest hazard we've identified in terms of sidewalks in the village. And it's in front of that building.
Which storefront is in front of?
Well, the Berkshire Hathaway and the old cheese shops or whatever it's been turned over several times. But that building, if you go out front, there's a good 3 or 4 inch drop off from the relatively narrow sidewalk into that sort of, what used to be a planting strip and now is sort of deteriorated asphalt or stone. So they should really fix that. It's a real,
Can that be fixed without a DOT permit?
I mean, at the very minimum, you could add sort of gravel to bring
Yes.
the level up, and that would allow water to percolate through, and, you know.
either gravel or soil should be added to bring it up to grade.
Right, it's a hard place to get anything to grow, but
I prefer soil and plantings myself,
Yeah.
but,
Yeah.
but I think from an emergency point of view, you should really take a look at
No,
that.
on safety, I mean, that's a good point, easy not to do.
Yeah. It's not exactly on this property, but it's right in there, just to the north.
Right here.
Yeah,
Right.
right in there. All right, so I think we're done here. We should probably vote on setting the public hearing, just for, so I have a motion to set the public hearing for February 21st.
First.
I'll make the motion. John? Second?
Did you second?
I
Michael?
seconded that.
Okay,
Karen
Karen,
seconded?
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So Ryan, the engineer gave us comments today on the drainage plans that we submitted.
Right, based on the use of the
Right.
lodging facility.
So instead of forwarding him these plans, should I work with, 'cause the only thing that really has changed with these plans is the parking table. The parking allocation is gonna go down and water and sewer is gonna go down, but instead of sending this to him to review, and then, because we really already have his comments.
Right, for the stormwater issues. I think anything that deals with the entrance and the exit and the parking, I mean, you would want double confirmation from Rob and possibly Brandy.
Okay.
But, yeah.
When would you need me to submit the revised plans for the 21st,
So,
the 7th? Thank you.
you're welcome.
I think we're good.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anything else to be determined? We don't have any minutes?
I heard a rumor that there was minutes, and then,
I didn't see them.
I don't know. I heard an email went out either last week that there was minutes. And I wasn't copied in on that, so I can't confirm or deny.
Victoria, if the owner is interested in.
One thing I wanted to bring up, and this, you know, I work still at the City of Beacon Planning Board. And we had
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he's happy to have a conversation, because if not on this project, there may be others
Yes,
where it makes
yes.
sense.
But there are a lot of programs available, and it'd be nice to be aware of them.
Okay, thank you.
There's a sign in the old Grand Cru store that says we're about to open.
I think they're a little overzealous. I've made it clear to the owner that his new tenant needs to submit a sign application before they can open. And that's the responsibility of the tenant.
It is written in crayon.
Yeah, the new tea shop is written in crayon. Yes, it is.
The crayon sign. Okay.
do they have a hanging sign
Paul
up
was
yet?
not
It says coming soon tea shop.
On the hanging sign?
No, inside to
Yeah,
glass.
I saw
It's
that,
on there.
and I thought they had that.
blocking paper, so there's just colored paper to block what's going on inside with drawings of tea.
So I mentioned it to the property owner, and he said he would notify the new tenant. My guess is.
There it is.
My guess is they are within Department of Board of Health right now. And the last time I heard, Board of Health is 6 months behind.
Well,
So whenever the sanitarian gets up there, I mean, I don't know what the extent tea needs. I don't know if they're serving tea. I don't know if who gets what cup, if it's just, I don't know.
okay,
All that we know is, you know, if it's just a sign needed, I would hope, you know, they know they have to come before you guys first. So they can open.
So I was talking, the planning board I work with was briefed by an attorney about planning board processes, and at the beginning of the year, they always have sort of a workshop training session for new members and that sort of thing, because they turn over members at the beginning of the year. And one thing that she stressed, which I had never thought of, is the idea that you should never do public business on your private email account. Because if you're ever foiled, which can happen, you know, people are free to foil, they can literally get access to your account, your private account, because that's where your public business is, and to get your emails and to confirm that those are the emails. So anyway, she said that the municipality should always set up separate email accounts for the planning board members so that all business is conducted on a public account rather than on a personal account. And I was wondering if that can happen.
I can certainly make an inquiry to the village clerk to find out from PCA how much additional access we have to acquiring village-based accounts like everyone else.
Okay.
All the other employees and staff does. Well, I shouldn't say that. You know, the street department doesn't have. It's just the foreman and the superintendent of public works. So, but yes, I can definitely ask the village clerk to look into that. I know that was something raised when we first dove in with the pandemic and utilizing Zoom. I know that was raised because of just the mere traffic of emails going back and forth if the boards were interested in getting village emails. And I believe the response at that time was no, that you guys were happy with utilizing your email accounts.
Yeah. This sounds like new and important information. That changes that a little bit, right?
I
mean, obviously, we have to exclude Darren in that because obviously Darren wasn't here 2.5 years ago. It's kind of you two and you three.
Yeah.
well,
It sounds important, and then if.
yeah, I mean, she was pretty adamant that this is really bad practice if you
Yeah.
have personal email accounts and doing public business.
True.
And likely the zoning board too, while you're at it, right? Same issue?
The same thing was raised and the same response, their response actually because they are on an as-needed basis, that they felt they could continue with the status quo.
Well, I think that what John's learned is a point that's very important, and I suppose if that had been communicated to anyone back then, their feelings would have been absolutely, let's get official email so that we're not subject to FOIL requests invading our private email. So please, let's.
Yep, I will inquire
let's
with the
get
village
village
clerk
emails.
and our liaison.
Yeah. Let's see if we can get them, unless anybody has an objection.
Nope. No.
Oh,
I hate having multiple emails. I already have 2, now I'd have 3, but it's the way of the world.
Yeah, sounds like a safer bet.
Yeah.
Just to follow up on the sort of can of worms I sort of opened this morning in terms of sharing just some preliminary comments and thoughts. Just, you know, I understand that the comment back was, you could share information with one another, but you just can't respond or ask questions and have a discussion over email or in any form related to that information. And I just wanted to put it out there for the board to think about, because there's something I very much like about it, and that is, you know, if I were to be able to see people's thoughts and comments, it might help me be more prepared for the meetings, right? So if I saw that Jeff had honed in on an issue that I hadn't noticed before, you know, or John had seen a street tree that's in conflict with the driveway apron, you know, I might go back out and look at that site a second time and say, yeah, I didn't pick that up on my last visit. And, you know, not that I need to discuss it with Jeff or John or whoever brings up that thing as part of their thoughts, memo or email to the group, but it would sort of better prepare me to think about the issue or talk to them in the meeting setting. So there is something I like about it, obviously not on the simpler applications, and it's not necessary in all cases, but it, in a way, does, I think, what maybe the ZEO used to do for this board, or what a town planner would do, and that is to share a memo of the planner's findings, or what the ZEO would come and talk about at the meeting. It allows us to sort of all of us to fill that position and share, you know, our take on the situation, and then be more informed and prepared to discuss it with one another when we actually get the chance to meet up in this setting. So I sort of like the idea of doing that where there's something to share, but just curious to hear what the rest of the board thinks, and if we're treading in some dangerous territory.
We might be, I don't know. I remember there was, I don't know how many years ago, when we first started using email to distribute plans and that sort of thing, there was starting to be discussion, and I can't remember how we determined, but we determined that that was not a good idea. Somebody flagged it and said, no, you can't do that. You can't have any discussion online or away from these tables of any application between members, even if it's not a quorum.
Right, discussion, but sharing?
Well, that's the question.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, when I thought about it this morning, when you raised the issue, I said, well, a list of questions doesn't seem like it breaches that line.
I think you breach the line when you all start speculating answers to those questions back and forth. I think that is when you breach
Right.
a line.
And keep it on the subject, not on commentary about the applicant or the,
Yeah.
you know, any of that sort of thing. If it's specifically, I would put it only in the form of questions. So it can't be looked at as you're leading somebody, you're just raising questions.
Right.
And keep it as sort of a dry list, and no sort of subjective commentary included.
And that's also why I did it sort of as an attachment to say, you know, here's a memo, right? Like this is printed, this is
Yeah.
published. It's not like an ongoing thread of conversation. It's
Right.
not something that could be lost in multiple responses of emails. It's something that, you know, if the applicant wanted it, here you are. I, in fact, even brought another copy tonight in case Victoria or Warren wanted a copy of it, just to say, well, you know, here it is. Here's what I was reading from. You know, it's no different than, you know, any other note I put in my notebook, but just I had it prepared, so I felt, because it was substantial, to share it early.
So I think we could go with that until we get some sort of chance to ask an attorney without spending another $150 an hour or something, half an hour or something.
I mean, assuming people like it, I mean, I can also, you know, it's not something we have to do. I just wanted sort of a sense of whether people thought it was useful or not necessary.
I think on, you know, 9 times out of 10 it's not necessary. But on something like this, which is a significant project, I don't see the harm in it. As long as, like, it can't be interpreted as commentary or discussion.
As long as what you're doing is stating, these are the questions I intend to ask.
Yeah,
John says, a dry list without commentary, and certainly that no one should respond to
right.
prior to the public meeting. What I always do is I make my list of, here are the things I want to ask. A couple of which Darren asked before I got to them, and then and John and Michael the same. You'll ask things that I had on my list before I got to them, and that's fine, because then they're dealt with.
Yeah. So I guess just putting it out there, I'd appreciate it from time to time if people had a longer list or things to share or notice something in particular. You know, it's certainly helpful to me in the preparation, absent a planner's memo or something that isolates certain issues, just because you miss things, and people have different perspectives or levels of exposure to certain sites.
I want to ask our audience, are you enjoying the meeting tonight?
It was a little long, but it was informative.
Informative, good, good.
Is there anything you wanted to bring up? You're hanging around that you're itching to say?
Yeah, I thought my wife and I were gonna be on board, but I don't see us on the board. And so I'm a little,
I mean, on the agenda?
right,
Yeah, you
not on
would've-
the agenda.
You would have received no notification that you would have been on tonight. You would have received either notification over email or in the mail that you were on the agenda tonight.
So you made some submission to the office that would have to come to the planning board? Is that,
Yes.
okay, I guess that means it will be at the next one,
February 7th, yes.
February 7th. Okay. And you'll get the notification that you're on for February 7th?
Oh, you don't have one? Why don't you put my name up front, so it'll be over in 5 minutes. It won't take an hour.
Our clerk handles
All
the
right, that's it,
agenda.
thank you, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have one follow-up, 55 South Street, the landscaping and the plantings. So this is probably, Darren,
What's 55? Money Penny?
so there's the red house on the corner,
Yeah.
North Parsonage and South.
Oh,
The
this is
very,
the
the
HVAC
very
units.
next house on your left.
This is heat pumps. This one.
Yeah. So I have confirmation that the plantings, the evergreen plantings were planted.
I saw them, that there were some green leaf plantings that I didn't remember there last time I walked by.
And according to the owner, they have not bloomed yet, or they wouldn't be blooming or doing their job.
Right.
And I did share with you guys the minutes
Sure. Well, the plan,
from
Yeah.
back then. I think what was missed, and we should probably check the video, is if they were supposed to be planted at a certain stage in life or a height.
I see.
I think,
From
Yeah.
my review of the minutes, that was not addressed, and that was not part of the
Yeah.
final approval.
my memory was, it was supposed to be as high as the units, so. it-
Yeah,
Screen.
So I could only find 4 feet.
4 feet.
Well, 4 feet would probably be sufficient.
Right.
They're not,
So-
there should be evergreens, not plants that need to leaf out.
That's what she said. She listed
Yeah.
the exact species from the list from the architect. The
Okay, so those,
Rosaceous, I know I'm missing this completely.
Yeah,
well,
there are some green leaf plants that look to be new. I can't imagine you could try to plant them this time of year.
yeah.
She said they went in, she didn't say when they went in, but she said they would not appear to be doing their job until the spring and summertime.
I figured we should press it until the spring when they could be, new plants could be planted and we could observe what they look like in growing condition. Because I can't imagine they won't die if they're planted this time of year.
And I also checked up on the, Unlimited Tomorrow. And you guys had given them a deadline to be completed of all the site work by April 30th of 2023.
Right.
And to date, no building permit has been filed. Obviously, nothing has been done. So I've had various correspondence with the engineer, and he needs a more formal letter to send to the owner. So
To just give them fair notice that the deadline's coming.
my hunch is we're going to be seeing him in the next 2 months, and either he's going to ask for an extension, which will be up to you guys, or he's going to file something like an excavation permit or a site work permit.
All right,
So
we'll see.
The language was completed, not submitted, right?
that the site work that they got approval for back in 2021 should have been completed, everything be completed. The parking lot completely redesigned, new landscaping,
Right. Fencing,
everything,
okay.
fencing.
Right, so submitting
By-
doesn't get him there, he's gotta finish the work.
Yeah, and based on getting somebody in the next 2 months to do anything, I don't think so. So, yeah. So, we shall see. You might see him, or, I don't know, he might try to file something, and then, you know,
Yeah. Say,
Then it
well,
gets
I've
kicked-
started, but
then
you
it
need
gets
60
kicked to the
days.
bill, yeah. I mean, he'll have to come for an extension, or, you know, if it's an excavation permit, then it's up to the building inspector.
There's still people working in there, right?
And limited tomorrow, making the prosthetics, yeah.
Okay. The last time I went by there were only 4 cars in the parking lot, and it used to be packed. But I didn't know if it was just the day or whatever.
It's pretty busy on a regular basis, quite a few
Okay.
cars there.
So,
Seems like less than it was maybe a year ago, but definitely a
yeah.
good dozen cars there.
And then did everyone receive the minutes from Co? That I sent around when Co
Yeah,
got its approval.
I
So
remember
about
seeing-
2 weeks ago,
I think it was the same email, isn't it?
To check that. Co.
yeah. Because it was brought up about tree plantings and whatnot. Can anyone go back in their notes? Because that whole thing started before I was here.
Huh?
That started in 2017. So if anyone can look back from the minutes that I found, there's no discussion of tree plantings.
Well, it should show on the site plan. You have the site plan, right? Or can find it in the file?
I still need to look for the hard copy, but
Yeah.
yeah.
That's what you
I
would
can
look for.
see. The only thing is I don't know what David stamped and if that was kept. So that, if you stamped one and signed it and they sent it to county, it's in county planning.
Should be on parcel access though, right?
No, that site plan won't show up on parcel access.
Why?
The stamp site plan from the chair,
Yeah,
usually they don't.
Yeah, only subdivisions show up on
just
it.
subdivision, so.
I'm sort of dealing with my predecessor here, so.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't expect the minutes would determine it. We'd have to have the paper copy. I assume that the village planning office had paper copies of everything that we've approved.
There's a lot of variations from Frank.
Okay, well, see if you can find the site
I'll
plan.
see what I know a topic that was discussed was the sidewalk.
I don't have stuff going back to 2017 in my files, I don't think. I clean them out every so often.
Mike, can you look to see if you
I
don't
don't-
have anything?
No.
I will look, I keep some site plans.
I'll check with David. I'm sure David has it. He's a
Okay.
back rat.
Oh, good,
And I can always ask Tim.
because I keep some site plans, but not all of them.
But that's it. That was from the last 2 meetings. That's what I can
All right,
recall.
I appreciate it. See if
Might
you
be
can
in
find the actual site plan, because that would have the trees and the numbers and the species on it, in theory. And I can't imagine we wouldn't have required them to do it. But it's going back
I know
a ways
there
and I
was a-
can't visualize it.
There's one sentence that just refers to a landscape plan.
Okay.
That's it.
I'm sure it's part of Mazzarella's set for the building permit submission. Right, that would have been a checklist item, a site plan as part of the building permit for something that size.
See, the thing was you guys did it as a renovation. They didn't do it as a new building.
But still, there was plans, right?
Yeah.
So I bet it may be in the building department files if it's not in the planning file.
We shall see.
Okay.
All right, everyone, motion to adjourn?
Couple of things,
Oh,
real
Mike
quick.
says so.
On Beach Street, it's like 3 down from you, John, that
Carport?
carport, one of our conditions was that the molding on the back post matched the front, like we called it Swiss cheese.
Yeah.
Not perfect.
It's just It's a pressure-treated round column that's got this thing on that they didn't do any of the molding to match the
Is it
front of it.
finished?
Looks finished. Nobody's been there.
It's not like a temporary held up
Still
until
open.
they,
Still open, so how long does that
Still
go?
open. Yeah, should have a year,
Okay.
a year to 18 months.
Okay, just telling you that, went on, got the carport, but didn't do the trim work.
Yeah.
And then,
They built it with like LVLs and put the curves on the LVLs,
Yeah.
just, unpainted and raw, so I was gonna mention the same thing, just, as long as before that gets closed out, somebody takes a look at it. The permit's still on the window, so it does look like they may still be working, but yeah, it's pretty crude.
Kurt Doyle, I don't know, talked to Ryan about this. He got approval from us to put an extra building across from the mobile station. Like, I thought I remembered it was gonna be next to that yellow house, or maybe a little bit behind it. And he had a modular put in, it's put on a slab, and it's kind of behind the front house. And I don't remember what we approved, but it went in real quick. It's not stick-built, it was a,
as I remember, we approved the house and a 3-car garage that he was gonna use.
yeah, and then, but then there was another, we subdivided that property for his house and his 3-car garage in the back, because the original house is historic district.
Right.
But then he also, part of that was another house to be on the front property, garage, or, there's another building that we approved for that front house.
Oh, is
And
that
he's
right?
put it in, but it's not where I remember, I think, where we said it was gonna be. And the story from Ryan was he got a modular for one of his clients, and then that project fell through, and he just had, the company made him eat this thing, so he just quickly put it in on a slab, and it's a nice looking building.
Oh, okay.
But it's not where, I don't think it's where, but I don't know, because,
It services the Ellis house. It's on the Ellis house property. Is that
Yes.
a garage or a storage shed or something?
it's a 2-car garage with an apartment above it. Yeah, no,
I don't remember an accessory apartment on that application.
I don't remember it either, that's why I'm bringing it up. It's
Yeah.
like, we spent a lot of time on it, all of a
Spent an
sudden.
entire year on it.
Yeah. So,
We spent all of 2017 on that.
Do you remember accessory
I
apartment?
wasn't here, I didn't get here until 2018. This is just my recollection of reviewing all the minutes.
Yeah, I don't remember an accessory apartment as part of that package. I mean, I think
I
it's a
don't
great
know.
idea, but you should
It's
get,
not what I remember exactly, it's like,
I haven't seen it.
yeah, because it was modular and it was brought in, bang, it was up in like a couple of days,
Yeah,
so.
I remember seeing like roofers back there, pounding. And I thought they put a new roof on that garage.
It's a 2-car garage, it's got an apartment above it, it's got an exterior staircase, it's got a metal roof, it's nice looking. But it just, I don't remember we approving it in that spot, I thought it was gonna be, but I may be wrong, I'm bringing it up because it's.
All right, I'll take a look at it.
Yeah,
And I probably wouldn't have kept the site plan for something like that.
yeah.
So Mike, you're not the only one.
Yeah.
His neighbors have raised it to our attention, and they just returned from being out of the country, so I believe Justin's gonna be addressing it this week with them.
With Kurthoff.
Yes.
Now motion to adjourn.
Okay. Make the motion to adjourn?
You've been dying a second, so.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.